When I found out that 100 very intelligent people are going to dedicate 18 minutes of their life listening to me talk, I could only think risk, right? So I had to talk about risk. And Ajay kind of mentioned that when you have a dream, when you have a passion, take the plunge. And almost always in life, love, career, so many things, whenever you do something new, it's always called the plunge. Why does it have to be the plunge, right? I don't want to fall. I want to do something new, but the idea is not to take a plunge. But anyway, the point is, yes, when I wanted to be an entrepreneur, everyone said, hey, you're going to take the plunge. Wow, big risk, blah, blah, blah. When I was going to marry the woman I ultimately married, it was supposed to be a huge risk. I'll tell you why. So I basically said, look, let's evaluate risk. Okay, what is risk? Well, how does the dictionary talk to you about risk? The dictionary says possibility that something bad or unpleasant will happen. When I tell you there's a possibility something bad or unpleasant will happen in your head, something bad or unpleasant has already happened, right? You're already thinking negative. You're already thinking something's going to go wrong. So now in the age of where you can create any fact you want sitting on your laptop, I created my own dictionary of, definition of a risk. The willingness to do something without certainty of outcome. That truly is what risk is, right? You do something, you don't know how it's going to turn out. It could well be more pleasant than you envision, but when you say possibility that something unpleasant could happen, it taints your mind and makes it negative, right? So with that in mind, I kind of started looking at how we perceive risk. This is how we perceive risk, right? I actually still don't know what that image in the front is, right? It doesn't matter. But to the best of my knowledge, that might not kill you. But the image in the background very well might, right? That's how we perceive risk. And why do we do that, right? So I did some research on the brain, not as much as the TED video before me. There's actually a part of your brain which stores unpleasant memories, right? Your fears. So if you've been bitten by a dog, that's a part of the brain which tells you every time you see a dog run, the dog's going to bite you again, right? That's the part of the brain, Seth Godin very beautifully calls it the lizard brain. So there is a technical name, I don't remember. If I told you, I'm sure you wouldn't remember. It's in engineering college. But the lizard brain you will remember, right? What the lizard does is it hates change and it hates risk, right? So that is why doctor parents tell their children, become a doctor. Not because there's no other profession worthy in the world. That's what they know. Anything outside of that is a risk, right? And by definition, something bad or unpleasant will happen if you don't become a doctor, right? So that's where we're at. So usually they say that there's lies, damn lies in statistics, right? So usually risk is justified by statistics. So usually say, oh, don't do this because, this many % of people who do this end up like this. So I took some statistics. So there's two images there, skydiving and going atop a building. If I show of hands, who thinks skydiving is more risky than going up a building? Okay, so most of you think going up a building is more risky, is it? Wow, okay, good, you're smart. So I actually compared the odds of dying while skydiving to the odds of dying falling off a building. Turns out you are 2,336 times more likely to die falling off a building than skydiving. You're safer jumping off an airplane than you are atop a multi-storied building, right? That's a risk for you. So why do we take risk, right? Why is it that we decide to take the proverbial plunge, right? What is it that drives us to do the kind of things that you do? And I look back at my life and the risk that I took. I don't know if they've paid off yet or not, but anyway, we'll take you along the journey. So risk is almost always associated with reward, right? So they always say high risk, high reward. So how many of your parents have told you don't play for the first 15, 20 years of your life because I know it's hard work, but it'll pay off one day? How many of your parents have told you that? Very nice. Okay, super. A lot of time. The others who are, maybe the parents are in the house. This is not the age for fun, right? So typically risk or whatever unpleasant that you undergo in your life is associated with reward. Why did I join the Merchant Navy? So I started my career in the Merchant Navy. Usually people say it's a terrible profession, stay away from family, there's huge risk, you might end up in Somalia as an unwanted guest and so on and so forth. But the point is it makes you a lot of money, right? So the money will make the whole toil worth it, right? Why do you become an entrepreneur? 90% of startups fail. So everything unpleasant you do along the way, which I call the journey, is worth it because high risk is high reward, right? So I want to take that and kind of shatter that myth a bit. So the first risk I took in my life, actually I spent 3 months of my 12th standard playing cricket. I think that was a bigger risk, but I'll not talk about that now. The first risk I took was to go out to sea. Now many people said multiple things. There's obviously the hazard of going out to sea. It's a dangerous profession. There's piracy. There's blah, blah, blah. You're only 18 years old. The other obvious thing is you're going to be 12th pass, you're not going to be a graduate. What if this doesn't work out for you? Who will give you a job? Blah, blah, blah. If you go out in the marriage market and say you're 12th pass, you're never getting married. Ever. My father tried, it didn't work out. As you'll discover later, no woman in India would be agreeable to marrying me and whatever. So that was that. So I was confronted with all these assertions of risk as to why you should not be joining the Merchant Navy. I said, look, I'm 36 now. I don't think I can go back to the Merchant Navy now. But at 18, I had the choice of going to the Merchant Navy and yet be where I am today, right? Now, whether that paid off or not, what was the reward for that, we'll revisit. So second risk. So after I had kind of seasoned myself in the Merchant Navy, seen the roaring seas and all of that, and above and beyond, came back, I said, I think I'm ready for bigger risks in life. So I decided to get married, right? And interestingly enough, in 2007, I met a very beautiful Dutch woman in lobby. How people meet there, I don't know. Technically we did, but we got friendly later on. So anyway, so my second risk was marriage. So obviously people said, look, there's a lot of risk associated with it. For me, it was a bonus, right? Because no woman in India marries a guy who's 12th pass, right? For her, there was a lot of risk associated with marrying a 12th pass Merchant Navy guy who's quit the Merchant Navy, right? And wants to be an entrepreneur, even worse, right? So the reward associated with the Merchant Navy was you make a lot of money. I didn't even make a lot of money, right? I'd become an entrepreneur. So I went from a very nice dollar salary to a very small rupee salary because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? So thanks to, thankfully my wife is quite a risk taker too, because if she had dug up statistics, or maybe she did and chose to ignore them, I don't know. This is what she would have found out. She would have found out, so compared to Caucasian couples, look all the way up. When a Caucasian woman marries a man of color, that's the politically correct way of saying it, you're 200% more likely to get divorced. It's true. It's true. So maybe she did research it online, took her chances, which makes her a risk taker, or she doesn't believe in statistics, which makes me lucky, right? One way or the other. So one way or the other, this lovely lady chose to marry me. She liked it so much. She was such a risk taker, she married me twice. She married me 2 times over, right? So she's quite a risk taker. There's one more story I'll tell you anecdotally later, which will tell you how big a risk taker she is. That this is nothing compared to the other little anecdote I'll tell you. Third risk, entrepreneurship, right? Leave the Merchant Navy. Exactly when I was supposed to become a captain, I quit. My father said, you're mad. There's somebody else here who's my cousin who knows just how angry my dad was. With best intention, right? You spent all your time in the Merchant Navy, 9 years, now you'll be a captain, you'll make tons of money, and you quit to become an entrepreneur, right? So great. So I did, and the stat that confronted me was that 90% of all startups fail. Brilliant. So how do you usually motivate yourself when you get into a new profession, new paradigm? You look at other people who did it well, right? So in engineering, you take the books of the guy who topped the university last year, doesn't help, right? So what about people who did take risk, right? And I don't know how many of you know about Elon Musk, but I believe that in the coming generation and the generation of our children, the one man that I know today who's going to have the greatest impact on humanity is going to be Elon Musk with Tesla and SpaceX. If you've not read up, please do, because this man's going to change the future of the human race. And if I talk about his life, I can talk for 2 hours more, but the point is, he said something very, very enlightening and not with too much wordplay. It says, greatness doesn't lie in simply not having fears in the first place, but rather in moving past them. It's very simple, it's lucid, but it's beautiful. Great people who create, that's the theme of the whole day, right? Ideate, recreate. People who create stuff aren't ones without fears. They're the ones typically who overcome that fear, take that risk, take that chance, and do what they have to do, right? And this quote has to come. So Henry T. Ford, another entrepreneur. So when I sought inspiration, I also went to Henry T. Ford, had to be done. At a time when horse carriages were the norm, he built the motor car, and they asked him, how did you think this up? How do you take the risk? How do you actually make something that was such a paradigm shift from what people are doing? He said, because if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So in a horse-driven era, you don't expect a guy to say, I want a 2-stroke internal combustion engine that runs on gasoline. That's my spec, right? Nobody does that. Nobody does that, right? So he did all of that. So anyway, so I got inspired by all of these people. I took all the risks that I did. I went to the Merchant Navy. When I had put in all the hard miles, the first half of your career in the Merchant Navy, like in any uniformed force, so to speak, is hard work. Second half is a little easier. You make a little more money and stuff like that, and all of that. In marriage, the first and second half doesn't work. It's the same. It's beautiful all through. That's what I meant. See, many of you started thinking otherwise. Terrible. So after doing all of that, what did it get me? So now we spoke of risk reward, right? Why do you take risk? You take risk for reward. Exactly. This is what you hope you get. This is the quantification of reward, right? But this is not what I got. I'm sure the story you want to hear is not that I've got money in the back of my car, because I don't, right? My car doesn't even have a boot. So I'll tell you, the first risk that I spoke about was joining the Merchant Navy, right? And quitting it when I did. My perspective to what I did in the Merchant Navy was this. I enjoyed every single day of it, right? I went to places that if I told you wouldn't find on the map. I experienced cultures that I don't think I'll ever get to go back again. If I were to tell you I'll pay you money to go to every conceivable corner of the globe, would you take it or not? You would, right? It just came wrapped in a profession called the Merchant Navy. So I don't know what the end game is. I don't know what the reward of that is, right? But the journey was spectacular. I went to places that I hope somebody would pay me to go again some other day, right? The second reward was a beautiful family. So we have 2 beautiful children. Again, the risk I took, if you can call it that, right, or the risk my wife took, there's no quantification of reward. You enjoy every single day, right? The third risk is a great team. So obviously, I think you heard I'm an entrepreneur. I run a tech startup. This is not the time to talk about my company, but most importantly, I go to work every single day doubly energized. I've never woken up once in the last year and a half since I started this company. And trust me, I've written a blog about it. We were bootstrapped, which I always say bootstrapped is a word for we had no money, right? Bootstrap just makes it look cooler. You can walk into a party with a jacket and say we were bootstrapped, and they'll say, great. And if I tell you I have no money, you'll say, okay, don't talk to him. He's going to ask you for money. So I was bootstrapped for the last year and a half. What kept me going was working with incredible people. So the risk I took with entrepreneurship, I don't know if it will pay off, but the journey so far has been brilliant. I worked with people younger than me, smarter than me, more intellectual than me, more driven than me, having great ideas, right? I love being the oldest guy in the room, right? There are a couple of older people, but I'm discounting them to make the statistics look better, right? So the story is not compelling if I say I'm the third oldest guy in the room, right? It's good when I'm the oldest guy in the room. So I work with phenomenal people, and I don't know where the reward for entrepreneurship lies, but to my mind it lies in creation. We are creating something incredible, a company, a product, working with brilliant people, right? Making a difference to the universe as we know it. That is my reward. So let's come back to the image, right? Taking the plunge. Why do we take risk, right? This is maximum risk. So that guy is probably never even going to take that jump, right? Take a wild guess. He's looking away, and NLP modeler is there. See, so his body language doesn't tell you he's going to go in and take that jump, right? Whereas this guy has already taken the plunge. Why do we do that? Because he's in a position of maximum risk. Before you start something, you're always in a position of maximum risk, because every fear in your head, like that shadow I showed you, is actually playing out as per the Merriam-Webster dictionary meaning of something unpleasant or bad could happen, right? Then you take that jump. Where do you have minimum risk? Where do you have minimum risk? Anybody? Here. Now, assuming you don't discover upon landing that you don't know how to swim, we're talking about risk, not stupidity, right? So, if you didn't know how to swim, you should not be doing this, right? So, assuming there's no sharks in those waters, that's bad luck. That's not risk, that's just bad luck, right? Or you don't know how to swim, or you know how to swim. My assumption is the minimum risk is here. Why did you take that plunge then? For any of you who've jumped into water from any height, the joy does not lie in landing. You come in, you surface. It lies in the little free fall. Have you ever experienced a free fall? How many of you have experienced a free fall? Willingly. Superb. So where's the euphoria, the max? During the free fall. Yeah? During the free fall. That is the reward. That's what I want to talk to you about. Reward is not this notional, quantified, monetary, material end game which makes the entire terrible journey worth it. If you're having a terrible journey, you're not going to get a great reward. That's my assertion, right? My point is, if you love what you do and you do it willingly, no matter what happens, the journey is the reward. And that's the message I want to leave you with, right? In entrepreneurship and in life, the risk is its own reward. So take some risk. Enjoy the journey, because this is my trademark. The journey is the destination. So thank you so much for listening to me. I hope it was of some help.